Hi, my name's Eric. I'll be reading you selections from today's Cape Cod Times. Today's date is Monday, May 4th of 2026. We'll start with the weather, as we always do, and across the Cape and Islands today. Mostly sunny, breezy in the afternoon with a high of 61 expected. Tonight, mainly clear, a low of 49 in the overnight. Tomorrow, Tuesday, mostly sunny and breezy, high of 64, low of 55. A beautiful day actually expected. Same thing for today. These are the two best days of the week because on Wednesday, variable clouds with a few showers. It's going to be cloudy and rainy, high of 65, low of 54. On Thursday, pretty much same thing with a little wind added, and then thunderstorms. So Wednesday and Thursday, expect wet days. And on Friday, sunshine and a few clouds, high of 60, low of 42. The sun will rise at 5:34 a.m. today. It'll set at 7:42 p.m. We'll have 14 hours and 8 minutes of daylight. The moon will rise at 11:07 p.m. and set at 6:50 a.m. Now, heading to the front of the paper, where they used to keep the lottery results, and we read these because, well, somebody asked for them. If there's something you would like read to people who are blind or print disabled, you can email us at info@audiblelocalledger.org or call us at 508-539-2030, and we'll consider reading it. And if you miss any of the information that we share in our readings, you can always go to audiblelocalledger.org. It's a fully disability-compliant website. Click on the Listen tab, and we keep 150 chronologically arranged readings, so the most recent are at the top under All Reads to the Blind. And we also keep a wide variety of periodicals and literature up there for your listening pleasure, as well as radio plays and what's on sale at the supermarket with our shopping guides. All of that is free for people who are blind or print disabled at audiblelocalledger.org. Now, for the latest results, we go to masslottery.com because the Cape Cod Times goes to press too early to give you those late results, and if you ask for them, you certainly deserve both sets. So, with the midday winning numbers for Sunday, May 3rd of 2026, the results were 2, 2, 2, 8. Again, yesterday's numbers game results in the midday, 2, 2, 2, 8. In the evening last night for the numbers game, the results were 7, 4, 1, 4. Again, last night's evening results, 7, 4, 1, 4. Good luck to all who play. Remember us if you win. From the front page of today's Cape Cod Times, we do not just survive, we rise. Herring Pond Wampanoag Tribe celebrates long-sought state recognition by Rachel Devaney. In Plymouth, the scent of burning sage wafted through the air as about 150 people slowly filed into the Plymouth Town Hall courtroom to celebrate Herring Pond Wampanoag Tribe's state recognition, which was ordered by Governor Maura Healey in November of 2024. With tears in his eyes, Herring Pond Wampanoag Tribe medicine man Troy Nizweek-Kokotiwak Currents opened the ceremony at 4:30 p.m. on Thursday and said that the journey towards state recognition has been led by tribal ancestors and current leaders who never gave up. It's great to be around so much family today, tribal people from all over New England. We are the same tree with different branches, said Currents. We are the Wampanoag Nation. The Herring Pond Wampanoag Tribe, headquartered in Plymouth, was granted state recognition with Executive Order 637, November 19th of 2024. Herring Pond is a distinct, cohesive, and autonomous tribal community that's existed in Massachusetts for centuries. Herring Pond's tribal homelands range from Plymouth to Bourne and Sandwich in Barnstable County. There are about 200 active Herring Pond tribal citizens, said Herring Pond chairwoman Melissa Ferretti. During the celebration, Ferretti said the shared history between eastern woodland tribes and European settlers hasn't always been easy. Healing, she said, doesn't happen overnight. Time teaches us to slow down, to see one another, to walk forward together with kindness, even when it is hard, she said. We do not just survive, we rise, we adapt, we excel. This is who we are. Plymouth Select Board Chair David Golden Jr. attended the celebration and said, "State recognition is a symbol of friendship and kinship between the town and the tribe." Golden also presented the tribe with a key to the town affixed to a plaque. The gift, he said, extends the message of community to community partnership. "This serves as the cornerstone of our shared heritage," said Golden. "As we look ahead, we look at this as a future team partnership based on mutual respect and common purpose." Mashpee Wampanoag Tribal Council members, along with clan mothers and elders, and the Wampanoag tribe of Gayhead, Aquinnah, also attended and presented their flags to Herring Pond, along with tobacco-filled prayer bundles. Mashpee Wampanoag Tribal Council Chairman Brian Whedon said Ferretti works tirelessly to support all people. "It's incredible to see you get across the finish line with all the love, blood, sweat, and tears you've put into this work," said Whedon during the celebration. Narragansett Indian Tribe Elder Hiawatha Brown was also on hand and presented Ferretti and Herring Pond Vice Chair Hazel Currants with a braided strand of sweetgrass, an eagle feather, and his personal pipe. Brown spoke to the crowd about future generations and the importance of intergenerational tribal unification. "We need to take the messages from today and take them home and pass them on to our children," said Brown. "We need to support each other." Assonet Band of the Wampanoag Nation Chief Ken Perry Alves also spoke during the ceremony about his work as a repatriation officer with the Wampanoag Confederation. The group, he said, has helped to repatriate 435 indigenous human remains back to Native American tribes of origin. "I've personally touched every one of them. Many of them were from Herring Pond homelands," said Alves, who broke into tears as he spoke. "Whatever Herring Pond needs, we've got your back." What is the state recognition process? The state's acknowledgement, said Ferretti, will allow Herring Pond to establish a formal and political relationship with state government, and will also enable Herring Pond to gain access to resources and opportunities essential for the tribe's welfare and prosperity. State recognition will lead to collaboration with agencies in areas such as education, healthcare, conservation of natural resources, and economic development, she said. Ferretti said she and Herring Pond's Tribal Council have been working toward state recognition since she became a member in 2016. Without state recognition, Herring Pond has often been denied services from the state and from other tribal service organizations that required tribes to have state or federal recognition. Herring Pond tribe members and attorneys Jamie Hoctor and Karina Silva worked for months to compile evidence that led to the executive order from Healy. For Hoctor, state recognition is not simply an act of government, but a restoration of visibility and dignity for Herring Pond. What is tended will survive, she said, and what is honored will grow. Hoctor and Silva, said Ferretti, helped the Tribal Council pop the last pieces of the puzzle into place. This moment must honor the Wampanoag Nation as a whole, and the descendants of those who remained here, or were driven off as colonization spread far and wide, said Ferretti in an email in the Times on April 22nd. Our families did not disappear. Our nations did not disappear. Our stories are woven together across this region. Silva said it's important to recognize that many decades of work that the Herring Pond Tribal Council did to gain state recognition. Every document that we read spoke to the life of someone that came before me. It reminded me why this is all so important, said Silva. Herring Pond, according to Healy's statement, has continuously inhabited lands within the borders of what is now Massachusetts, with ancestral homelands stretching from Plymouth to the upper reaches of Cape Cod. Our administration deeply appreciates our strong ties with the indigenous tribes across our state, and this executive order gives Herring Pond Wampanoag the recognition they deserve, said Healy. State recognition for Herring Pond, said Ferretti, has been a long time coming. All around her, she said, people are celebrating the 250 years since the Declaration of Independence was ratified. But she hopes people can remember that Wampanoag people have inhabited America for far longer. Our story did not begin in 1776, and it did not begin in 1620. Our presence here is not a return, it's a continuation, said Ferretti. Sometimes it takes centuries for the truth to be recognized. Sometimes it takes 500 years for a people to be seen clearly. Our next headline in the Cape Cod Times of today, May 4th, about the Orleans Rotary, construction likely as state targets flood risk, by Susan Vaughn. Eastham residents were anxious to hear about proposed changes to the Route 6 Orleans Rotary, part of which is in their town, packing a meeting room at the Eastham Public Library on Thursday night, April 30th. They were not all pleased with the options. The State Department of Transportation officials from the Highway Division presented 4 possible plans, including one that would leave the Rotary the same, but raise it, and 3 plans with smaller roundabouts. Estimated cost of the changes is $7 million, according to the department. Doug Johnson, program manager with the Highway Division, said the purpose of the changes was to address flooding projections in the future, 2050 and beyond. He said the center of the Rotary is a salt marsh now. The 4 proposals are the result of a Cape Cod Commission study of low-lying roads on the Cape that were narrowed down from 17 since the project started in 2023, he said. The projected start of construction on the Rotary is early 2030. The flooding will occur if we don't do something, Johnson said, and added that the Rotary and Route 6 would become impassable. He showed a graphic of high tide in the Austin Smith Sanctuary on the west side of the Rotary and Smith Lane underwater every day at high tide. In addition to addressing the flooding, Johnson said that the Rotary changes would also address safety issues in the Rotary, where rear-end collisions and crashes from merging vehicles are the most common accidents. The changes also would modernize the Rotary area, he said. Eastham resident says leave it as it is. Johnson briefly described each plan projected on a large screen, then asked the residents to look at the plans on easels around the room and submit their preferences. Several people had questions and comments first. The greatest thing about this Rotary is it's big, Jim Badera of Eastham said. I suggest we leave it as it is. He proposed that local contractor Robert B. Ure could elevate the Rotary with less cost. Badera, a former chair of the Eastham Planning Board, later told the Times that he favored the large Rotary for better visibility, comparing it to a roundabout built on Route 6A in Orleans near the Lost Dog Pub, which he said is difficult to maneuver. Another man said the project should be postponed to 2035 and asked about the opinions of police and fire officials. Johnson said police and fire officials who had been consulted about the different options said they would not negatively impact their operations. One woman said she felt the residents were cut off from asking questions. Elaine Wright, who lives on Route 6 in Eastham, also told the Times the Rotary should be left as is, raising it if necessary and expanding the culverts. She recalled when the Rotary was built in the 50s over wetlands before there were wetlands restrictions, and her grandmother and great-aunt were very upset. Eastham is surrounded by water, Wright said, with a narrow gap between Cape Cod Bay and Town Cove at the Rotary. The first alternative plan showed one roundabout, replacing the Rotary with a signal light where Rock Harbor Road enters. Johnson said that option would allow the salt marsh to reestablish and improve the wildlife habitat. The second option would have 2 roundabouts and no signal at Rock Harbor Road, but entrances and exits to the Rotary. The third plan would elevate the existing Rotary and make the existing culvert bigger, leaving the Rotary basically the same, Johnson said. The fourth plan would also have 2 roundabouts, one off Route 6A in Orleans and the other onto Route 6 toward Eastham. Johnson also said other locations along Route 6 in Orleans would need to be addressed for flooding, likely with a berm or a seawall. Another meeting on the Rotary proposals will be held in Orleans at a date to be determined in early June, and in a larger venue, Johnson said. He acknowledged that the Eastham meeting should have been in a larger space, but state transportation officials hadn't expected the large turnout. Many who attended left quickly after Johnson's presentation, as a large number had to stand at the back of the room, and it was difficult to get around to the smaller renderings. The library meeting room was made to hold 120 people, an employee said Friday, but the setup for the screen, the easels, and 2 large tables limited the seating to much less. Library Director Melanie McKenzie said state employees asked her to set up 60 seats and some tables for the meeting and leave space around the outside, which accounted for the crowded situation. Final local story on the front page of today's Cape Cod Times. Father of 9 with Cape Cod ties dies in a truck crash, by Rachel Devaney. A man with ties to a Harwich trucking and propane company was killed while driving a tanker truck on I-95 in Danvers on Monday night. State police units arrived on the scene of the crash at roughly 10:54 a.m. The crash, which happened at exit 70, involved the tanker and a passenger vehicle, according to state police. Driver of the tanker, Justin Obert, according to Tasha Trucking and Propane's Facebook page, died on scene, according to a state police press release. Troopers from the Collision Analysis and Reconstruction Section, Crime Scene Services, and Commercial Vehicle Enforcement Section responded to the scene to investigate, according to the state police. The chief state medical examiner also responded to the scene. The two right travel lanes of I-95 northbound were temporarily closed for the investigation, but they were reopened at about 2:21 p.m. on Monday. The driver of the tanker was Justin Obert. Obert was an employee of Tasha Trucking and Propane, according to a person associated with the company. Tasha Trucking and Propane is headquartered in Harwich and shared a social media fundraiser for Obert's family on its Facebook page. According to the fundraiser, Obert was a husband and a father to 9 children. Obert, according to the fundraiser, was a longtime truck driver and was devoted to his family. Tasha Trucking and Propane opened in 1994 and is a multi-generation, family-owned company, according to its website. Moving inside the paper, foundation load testing began May 1st for future Sagamore Bridge, by Susan Vaughn. The Massachusetts Department of Transportation began its foundation load testing on Friday, May 1st, for the future construction of the Sagamore Bridge in Bourne. The work's an important step forward and critical to bridge design, a department news release said. The load testing activities will be intermittent, limited to daytime hours on weekdays, and it will last for 2 to 3 months, according to the notice. The work will include drilling shafts and driving piles into the ground to gather data in support of the foundation design of the future bridge. The testing will be at 4 locations near the Sagamore Bridge, 2 north of the Cape Cod Canal and 2 south. Work south of the bridge is starting first near the former Christmas tree shops. Residents and travelers may hear loud banging sounds associated with pile driving, the announcement said, while the shaft drilling will generate less noise and will last for several months. Work in progress. Early work for the new Sagamore Bridge signs are being placed near the site to tell passers-by what's going on. MassDOT is advancing the $2.1 billion Sagamore Bridge project toward a projected construction start of late 2027. The Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs recently issued a certificate on the final environmental impact report. MassDOT also has begun the design-build procurement process for the Sagamore Bridge with the publishing of a request for letters of interest from qualified design and construction firms. And in a story that was profiled in the Sandwich Enterprise, the headline reads from the Cape and Islands section, "Firearms on Municipal Property to be Weighed at Sandwich Town Meeting," by Rachel Devaney. Certain state firearm restrictions could be rolled back in Sandwich if residents vote in favor of Article 18 at the May 4th town meeting, which is happening today, a measure that would make it legal to carry a gun on municipal property. The state, according to Town Clerk Taylor White, passed a bill in 2024 that in part prohibits firearms from being carried in all municipal buildings across the state. But Petition Article 18, he said, is intended to adopt language within the law that gives local communities the ability to opt out of that restriction. If the petition is successful, the town will notify the state that we've exempted ourselves, said White in an email to the Times on Wednesday. The potential change, said White, won't pertain to schools, courthouses, and polling places. Those restrictions remain, he said. During town meeting, which will be held at 7 p.m. tonight at the middle high school, residents will also discuss Article 9, a beach renourishment account appropriation, and Article 14, a proposal that asks voters to approve roughly $755,000 to pay for the middle high school's multi-purpose courts and associated equipment. How would the firearm law change? In July of 2024, the state passed a firearm safety reform bill that prohibited carrying of guns into polling places and government buildings. The bill also cracked down on the sale of ghost guns. It strengthened the state's red flag laws and updated the definition of assault-style firearms. Massachusetts enacted the legislation after a U.S. Supreme Court ruling in 2022 expanded gun rights and tossed out a New York law that required people to have proper cause to carry a weapon. A short while later, the High Court tossed out a Massachusetts law that restricted gun ownership. Up until the 2024 legislation, those with a license to carry could have their guns on municipal properties, according to White. Article 18 was petitioned by John Mahwini, a local businessman. Mahwini, according to his Cape Cod Hillbilly Facebook page, is an advocate for sportsmen and women and works to improve legislation for hunting, fishing, shooting sports, and outdoor activities. Mahwini didn't immediately return calls to the Times. His name is spelled M-A-W-H-I-N-N-E-Y, Mahwini. Article 9 asks voters to set aside roughly $150,000 toward future beach replenishment projects. The article proposes beach parking funds be transferred to renourishment efforts, according to the warrant. The article appears annually on the warrant, and it transfers 20% of the beach parking funds received from the prior beach season for beach nourishment. The town, along with the federal government, are working together to curb erosion by finding ways to replenish Sandwich beaches, including Town Neck Beach and Spring Hill Beach. Article 14 is a proposal that asks voters to approve roughly $755,000 of Community Preservation Act funding to pay for the middle high school's multi-purpose courts and associated equipment. The article transfers existing funds under the Open Space and Recreation Program to resurface the multi-purpose courts at the school and to improve associated infrastructure and lighting. Budgetary increases are in line with recent budgets, according to the town meeting warrant, but several cost drivers continue to shape the town's financial structure, including employee-related costs, which remain a significant component of the operating budget. Health insurance costs also continue to rise, according to the town, and represent a structural challenge within the constraints of Proposition 2.5. This year's budget process, according to the warrant, reinforces that those costs are not temporary fluctuations, but part of a continuing upward trend. Retirement assessments and other benefit obligations are also accounting for a meaningful share of total operating expenditures, according to the warrant, limiting flexibility within the town's fiscal framework. School tuition assessments also remain another significant factor. Fiscal year 27 tuition assessments are projected to total approximately $5.1 million, representing slightly more than 6% of the overall tax levy. These assessments reflect payments the town is required to make for certain educational programs outside the school district, including charter school tuition and other state-mandated placements. The town also pays a separate assessment to the Upper Cape Regional Technical School, which increased by 6.42% this year, according to the warrant. We'll close with our obituaries, a different kind of local news in today's Cape Cod Times. Dated May 4th, the first obituaries of Claire McCarthy of Derby, Connecticut. Claire McCarthy, a 99-year-old Derby resident, entered into eternal rest on April 28th. She was born March 15, 1927, in Derby. A longtime parishioner of St. Mary's Church, Claire worked as an executive assistant for several brokerage firms in New Haven. She leaves her son, Brian McCarthy of Cape Cod, and many family and friends. A massive Christian burial will be held on Friday, May 8th at 11 a.m. at St. Mary's Church in Derby. Friends may call at Jenkins, King, and Malerba Funeral Home, 12 Franklin Street in Ansonia on Friday between 9 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. Following Mass, burial will be in Mount St. Peter's Cemetery in Derby. The next obituary is of Elliot G. Carr. Elliot Graybill Carr, a bank president turned bird photographer whose life was defined by his dual passions for Cape Cod and for family, died April 24th. He was 87, and although Alzheimer's had faded his memory over the last decade, it never claimed his sharp wit. He was born in Hanover, New Hampshire in 1938 and was the middle of three sons of Robert Carr, a Dartmouth political science professor who later became president of Oberlin College from 1960 to 1970, and Olive Carr, a homemaker who, when the boys had grown, earned her master's in social work from Howard University and promptly put it to use. Elliot, known as Elio as a boy, was by many accounts the calmest and most well-behaved of the Carr boys, a fact which speaks mostly to what a truly unruly household it must have been. Elliot stayed in Hanover for college, graduating from Dartmouth in 1960, where he competed on the ice hockey team. He spent a year at Princeton studying economics before deciding an academic life wasn't for him, and he transferred to Harvard, where he earned his MBA. In 1967, Elliot met Susan Wheatley, the librarian at Lincoln Sudbury High School, on a double date. Susan was paired with Elliot's roommate, and Elliot was Susan's roommate, but Elliot was so smitten by the young librarian that they switched not long after. A few weeks later, Elliot and Susan got engaged while driving on the New Jersey Turnpike. Miraculously, their friends from the double date continued to speak to them. The couple settled in Pembroke, Mass., where Elliot served on the school committee and Susan on the library board. By the time Elliot retired from the bank in 2005, the number of Cape-based banks had dwindled dramatically. Today, there are only three left: the Cape Cod 5, Cape Cod Cooperative, and Seamen's Savings. After his retirement in 2005, Elliot embraced his love for environmentalism and artistry as a writer and photographer. He wrote a regular column for the Cape Cod Times and then the Cape Cod Voice. Despite the productive professional and civic life, Elliot's greatest passion was for his family. Elliot loved to dole out advice, often long-winded, but always heartfelt. A celebration of life will be held in Brewster in the early fall. Donations in Elliot's memory can be made to the Brewster Conservation Trust, or get outside and remember him while enjoying a good walk. The next obituary is of Lauren Cohen. Lauren Frederick Cohen passed on April 12th, having reached his 97th birthday. He lived in Brewster and was a hard worker, having worked in construction, and was a supervisor at the Roland Nickerson Youth Forestry Camp. He is survived by many family and friends. He was predeceased by his wife of 63 years, Corinne. A memorial service will be held at a later date at the Brewster Lower Road Cemetery. In lieu of flowers, please send donations in honor of Lauren to the food pantry of Brewster Baptist Church, 1848 Main Street in Brewster, Mass. The final obituary is of Philip G. Wick, who at the age of 91 passed on March 3rd, surrounded by family. He's survived by his wife, Deborah Wick, and many family and friends. Phil carried his passion for educational equity into retirement, helping to found the Dennis Yarmouth Support Our Schools advocacy group, working on long-term youth action plan for public schools for Cape Cod. Contributions may be made in memory of Phil to the Phil Wick 56 Scholarship Fund, care of Williams College. A memorial service in celebration of Phil's life will be held at Thompson Memorial Chapel at Williams College in Williamstown, Mass. On June 20th at 10 a.m., with a reception to follow at the Williams College Faculty Club. All are welcome. And with that, we've come to the end of our reading of the Cape Cod Times for May 4th. This is your reader, Eric, saying be well, be safe, look after each other. Bye for now.